Good morning. Thank you for joining us today to come out and discuss how our city has utterly failed homeless New Yorkers. On October 18th, 1977, I went to a ball game at the old Yankee Stadium, sitting in the upper deck. I'll never forget it because it wasn't just any game. It was the game in which Reggie Jackson hit 3 home runs, leading the Yankees to win the World Series. We celebrated like you wouldn't believe. I know it's a little hard to remember after a year of COVID, but I was hugging people I'd never met before. It was a moment of pure joy. But there was a very different moment I'll never forget that day as well. As I left the stadium, I remember seeing the hollowed out buildings, seeing our fellow New Yorkers sleeping on our streets. At a young age, I remember asking myself, how can this be? How can it be that in the richest city, in the richest country on earth, we allow our neighbors to sleep on our streets, on our subways? And it made me angry. So I went to work, first as a volunteer at a homeless shelter, then with the National Coalition for the Homeless, then with leaders like Ana Vincente and Bishop Johnny Ray Youngblood to create truly affordable housing here in the Bronx, in eastern Brooklyn, and across our city. Tragically, homelessness is worse today than when it outraged me as a child. Worse, in fact, than any time since the Depression. The mayor has utterly failed to solve this problem and continues to blame others for his incompetence and lack of leadership. And look, you don't have to take it from me. The numbers speak for themselves. Since he took office, street homelessness has absolutely exploded in our city, with the number of single adults sleeping each night in DHS shelters, like the one right here, hitting an all-time record of more than 20,000 people. More than double the number when he took office. In total, more than 50,000 New Yorkers sleep in our shelters each night, and many more on the streets or the verge of eviction and homelessness. Think about that. Last week, I was in Co-op City receiving the endorsement of Assemblymember Mike Benedetto, and there are about 50,000 people who live in all of Co-op City. The number of New Yorkers who are currently living in our shelters could fill up Co-op City, could fill up Yankee Stadium. This is staggering. And that's more alarming. It's even more alarming because it doesn't have to be that way. I know that because I've dedicated my entire career to tackling and solving the complex issues around homelessness. And I can tell you right now that homelessness is solvable. During my time as President Obama's housing secretary, we eliminated, not reduced, but eliminated veteran homelessness in more than 80 cities and states across the country. And we reduced chronic and family homelessness by more than a quarter. During my time as Mayor Bloomberg's housing commissioner, we substantially reduced street homelessness in this city, with the number of single adults sleeping in shelters down by 30%. We were able to accomplish this not by just looking at homelessness as an issue of housing, but also as a mental health issue, a substance abuse issue, a criminal justice issue, and an issue of poverty. By taking an intersectional approach to homelessness, instead of trying to solve it with just homeless programs and shelters, that's the approach, unfortunately, the current administration has taken. We were able to get to the root of this issue and make significant progress here in New York City and across the country. As mayor, I will take exactly the same approach. Just as I led the Interagency Council on Homelessness for President Obama, I would convene every office and agency of our city government that touches homelessness and bring them to the table to solve this complex problem. And that starts with supportive housing. Many of our neighbors who are forced to live on our streets or our subways and in these shelters are not just dealing with lack of access to housing. Many of these folks are dealing with mental health issues, with substance abuse issues, and in some cases with criminal justice as well. Supportive housing brings all of these different silos together under just one roof, literally and figuratively, to give our homeless neighbors the tools they need to overcome these challenges and get their lives back on track. As mayor, I will dramatically expand the creation of permanent supportive housing units for those who need the intensive support provided by this form of housing. I will create more than 2,000 units of supportive housing each year for individuals and families living with a serious mental illness, substance use disorder, or other disability, and for young adults as well. I would do this by negotiating a New York 5 agreement that builds on the landmark New York 3 agreement I negotiated as housing commissioner. To make sure we quickly get homeless New Yorkers the housing and other supports they need, I will build an integrated, coordinated entry system, sharing data across all of city government. This would ensure that when people leave high-risk settings like Rikers Island, mental health treatment, or foster care, they are directed to housing quickly instead of falling through the cracks and onto our streets. As part of this effort, I will expand the city's voucher program, and my administration will work with the Biden administration to provide Section 8 vouchers to people leaving jail and prison to ensure that they too can access housing. I started this effort during the Bloomberg administration to great success, even despite those who contended that people leaving prison didn't deserve this type of assistance. It's now been replicated in more than 40 cities across the country. They were wrong then to criticize this approach, and they are wrong now, because these are exactly the type of strategies and policies we need to implement here in New York if we're ever going to truly solve homelessness in our city. Finally, as we are doing all of this, we will make our shelter system more humane and effective by moving to models like safe havens that treat homeless New Yorkers with dignity and respect. By doing all of this, we can reverse the alarming trends that we've seen take hold under the current mayor and give our homeless New Yorkers the resources and housing they need and the dignity that they deserve. Together, we can reimagine the right to shelter as a right to housing in our city, and we can end homelessness. Thank you.